أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Inshallah, we are all benefiting from the holy month of Sha'ban, and inshallah we will continue to learn even if we are quarantined and isolated and can't see each other. So we'll start today's session like we start all our sessions with the recitation of Dua al-Faraj, so we can have the blessing and the presence of our Imam Mahdi Ajjallah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif. So let's all recite together. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا
برحمتك
يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
So if you remember last lecture we talked about the divine intellectual soul, or the human soul, and what we said about it was that it is in potential and that we need to actualize it. And once we actualize it, we can reach that level of the perfect human son Kamil. And we said there were four factors or four different things that we need to achieve that we can actualize the soul. They're like the four conditions. Like for a seed, it has conditions. They're the four things that we need to do to actualize the soul. And these four things were the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love of Ahlul Bayt, hanging out with the right crowd or the right people, and dhikr. So these are the four. However, so today we're talking about the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The thing is, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is probably the biggest one of these four. And it encompasses the other three. And so you actually need the other three things to even reach this one. Okay? So that's the difference between this one and the other three. But we are going to start with it today. So we're going to start with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should probably start by looking at the Quran. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم in Surah Tawbah, ayah 24. قل إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وأخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله فتربصوا حتى يأتي الله بأمره والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. صدق الله العظيم. So this means, say, if your parents, children, siblings, spouses, and tribes, the money that you spend, the trade that you're involved in, with decreasing fear, and place you live in, is more beloved to you than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, and working hard for His sake, then wait till Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings His order, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide corrupt people. So before we go into what this means, when the ayah says, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings His order, this means death. So it's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses that our time in this world is up, our plantic cell's clock runs out, and we move on to the next world. So that's just what that means. What's interesting in this ayah is it's saying that if we don't love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet and his messengers as much as all these other things like family, the community, our money and possessions, then He compares us to the corrupt people. It says, does not guide the corrupt people. So what is this link between love of Him and corruption? To understand this a bit more, we should probably look at what corruption actually is. And corruption is, in basic terms, the abuse of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And if you remember from last lecture, when we were discussing knowledge, we said that a lot of people use knowledge as power and abuse it as a way to control others or invent things that harm others, like the nuclear bomb and things like that. So it's pretty much abuse of whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. That is corruption. And this includes our own potential. So if we do not use what we have been given in the correct way, it is abuse of power and therefore corruption. This corruption is inherently like a bad thing, and the corruption can come in the form of not like actually fulfilling our potential, actualizing our potential, because we're not fulfilling what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, or not using what He's given us in the correct manner. It's theoretically abusing what He's given us. And that's why we actually can say that not actualizing our human soul or a divine intellectual soul is in fact corruption. But the thing here is that this corruption can never come from the divine intellectual soul, because that is a place of purity. So where does this come from? So the answer to this is that it actually comes from allowing ourselves to be overcome and controlled by our animalistic soul. And we mentioned this at the end of lecture 3. We said how we have to try allowing our divine intellectual soul to control our actions, rather than our animalistic soul, which only uses its senses to see the world. Because if we let our animalistic soul take control, we're giving shaitan access to us. Why that's the case is because the animalistic soul only deals with our senses, with things that are like the appearance of things. And so the shaitan can give us the illusions of things to make them appear good without letting us see their reality. So that's where corruption comes from. It means that we only deal with the appearances of things, not thinking of the consequences of those actions. And Imam Sadiq's hadith that we've mentioned a couple of times, where he says that we've been given desires, and if we control them, we're better than angels, and if we don't, we're worse than animals, is really applicable here. Why that's the case is, as you can see, we cannot let our animalistic soul control our things, our desires control our actions, or else we are going to be worse than animals. And why that's the case is because we have given into this corruption. We have let ourselves get overcome by our desires, and therefore have killed our potential. And that is why, that is the link between the animalistic soul, corruption, and the divine intellectual soul. So, in summary of what we just said, Allah SWT has given us the Quran. And the Quran acts as a guide for us. It is a way for us to continuously have this link to Allah SWT's jurisdictions and rules that can help guide us towards Sirat al-Mustaqim. In Surah Al-Fatiha we say, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. And if we do deviate from the Sirat al-Mustaqim, like how we can deviate, is if we do not actualize our potential. And we do let this corruption take over us, and we lose that control to our desires. And what that does is we can't achieve what we were meant to be, which is this insan kamil. And only this what we're trying to get to here is to go on the Sirat al-Mustaqim is to follow these steps to actualization. That is what the Sirat al-Mustaqim is. Because without becoming this insan kamil, we can never reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get close to Him. And that's what the Sirat al-Mustaqim is. It's the path that we take to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, if we don't actualize ourselves and death comes, it's as we said before in the potentiality and actuality lecture. Death will be painful because we'll be forced to go through this metamorphosis and this change as we go to the next world. And therefore, we're going to have to sever our attachment to the dunya, and that will be painful. And we're going to suffer the reality of our actions in the hereafter, as ugly as they may be. And so, that is what we've sort of moved on to throughout all these lectures. We've gotten to this point. Now let's move on to what the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to do with all of this. The question here that I'm going to ask is similar to a question we asked in the first lecture. If you remember in the first lecture, we said that we found out that we have to know stuff about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gain knowledge about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then we asked the question, where do we even start? We don't know so many things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have no idea where to even begin our search. And a similar thing can be said here. Where do we know? Where do we start in loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And to understand the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's look at a more common understanding of a love that we can all relate to. And what we mean by this is, the normal definition of love. And, Google defines it as an intense feeling of deep affection or great interest or desire in something. But the problem is, are we actually allowed to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a primitive manner? Like, this is like sort of like a really basic form of love. Is that really the same love that we use to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And to understand why we're looking at this love specifically is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually given us normal love that comes from our desires as a way for us to access His love. They're not the same thing, so let's clarify. Normal love isn't the same as loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we can use normal love to get to that. And what we mean by that is we're going to introduce the concept of love and motivation and their relationship. Because these two concepts are really linked. And we require motivation to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because obviously we won't even start actualizing ourselves. We will just continue to, play around in the material world if we don't have motivation to even go get closer to our God. And so motivation is super important. So to see the relationship between normal love and motivation, let's give an example. The example will be, if I give you these two foods, which one would you choose? Ice cream or kale? If you were a normal human being, you'd obviously choose ice cream because it's delicious and it's amazing and it looks beautiful and colorful. So see, our senses are telling us, it's tasty, it looks nice. By the way, they're both halal, so that's not a factor. We won't have to check in that. But let's say, with our senses will make us have these desires to want the ice cream because we think it's nice. And so we start loving ice cream. And that makes you more motivated to choose ice cream than kale. Alternatively, if you're in the minority that have chosen kale, that also stems from a love of some sort. You obviously love how, your body image. You want to be healthy, you want to, maybe you're a bodybuilder or something like that. You want to be healthy. And your love for a good physique has motivated you to choose something that may essentially not be appetizing. It does look fresh here, but kale usually isn't regarded as something that tastes nice. So here we can see that love has correlated to our motivation to choose something. And so what we can do is we can use this to motivate us, so we can use normal love to motivate us to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll explain this further later. But now we'll give an example of where this all began, sort of thing. Where did the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually come from? Because here we've said that this love comes from our desires, which comes from our heart, because that's the source of the animalistic soul. Surely we have to understand where this love comes from. It can't be the same place, right? It can't be the same origin. So let's give an example, and we'll give a story. This story is of a king, let's say. And this king had, a really, really beautiful kingdom. It was amazing, it was beautiful. Many forests and rivers, okay? However, this king also had a part of his kingdom that was, a bit further away. It was a bit unknown. So only he knew what was there, but none of his subjects knew what was going on in this place. It was quite foggy and misty, so you couldn't see it from outside. And he labeled this land the land of forgetfulness, okay? So this king then issued a challenge, because he's got this land, he knows what's there, he knows that there are some really good things there, but no one else does. So he issued a challenge. He said, I want to send someone to the land of forgetfulness, and they need to come back to me after they see this place. So what the king has done, he's issued a challenge. He wants to share this place with someone else. He wants someone else to see it. So he issued a challenge to all his subjects. He told them, hang on, who's willing to take up this challenge? So he first asked the mountains, and the mountains were like, no. I don't want to. I fear that I'm going to fail. He went, all right, how about the earth? The earth is strong and it's big, but the earth also said no. It feared losing the king himself and losing connection with the king. He then asked the sky, and the sky said, it's too big of a risk. But then the human came along, and the human being said, we'll do it. The king was very happy that the human being accepted the challenge, but he knew it would be hard. And so the king said, all right, human, thank you for taking up this challenge, but I'm going to give you a key. And this key will allow you to come back to me after you go to this land of forgetfulness. And the key is the love for the king, so love for him. And this key is going to be attached to your heart. And if you keep it safe, then you will be able to use it and return to me. So this is the end of the story. It was just a bit of a general story. So let's now look at the connections between, so what we're trying to get to. So let's say, in the metaphorical sense, the king was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the land, or that big kingdom, was all of Allah's creations and His kingdoms. And this dunya, or this material world, the test that we have here, is the land of forgetfulness. So, what's interesting here is that the king said that he's going to give us a key for us to be able to return to him, and he put it in our heart. Remember, we said the heart is the origin for normal love. So are we really saying that, normal love and the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are going to be in the same place in the heart? And the answer is yes. And why that is as we said before. We can use normal love to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how we can use it is it sort of gives us a taster. It's sort of like a premature version of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something that we use to sort of begin to understand what love is. And so when we get to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not something that we can't understand at all. We have some sort of understanding of it. And to give a story to make this a bit more clear, there is a story of a sheikh and a student. And the student went out to the sheikh and he was like, "Sheikh, teacher, can you tell me just how can I start loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, how does that look like?" And so the sheikh asked him, "Have you ever loved a girl?" And the student was like, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Sheikh, what are you on about? Of course that's haram." And he was like, "Then you're never going to know how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you need that love as a taster to understand what love is, and so know how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." So that's just for anyone's, for our information, another reason we've been given desires. They help us, motivate us to do stuff in this dunya, have actions and stuff like that. But at the same time, they also give us love, and love is a taster for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's really important. Another thing that we can discuss here, so another thing that we want to discuss here is that this story is actually true. This story is what happened to us before we were created. And if you don't believe us, it's in the Quran. Surah 33, ayah 72. You can look it up yourself. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَنْ يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. We offered the trust the skies, the earth, and the mountains, and they declined to bear it, and fed it. But the human being fed it. They were ignorant and unjust. So here it's showing, this is telling us the story. This is literally what happened. All creation was asked to take up this challenge. We're going to amana, offered this trust. We're going to tell you what the trust is soon. And only the human being accepted it. All the other creatures could not, because they didn't want to risk losing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this trust that we've been given has the potential to make us lose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The trust, by the way, is our free will. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us our free will to test us, to make us perfected once we reach Him. And that's what, in Imam Sadiq's hadith, it's what makes us better than angels. We're better than angels because we have this free will. We have the potential to fall, but if we choose to not fall and we choose to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's more worth it and more profound. And that's why we're better than angels. This free will is what makes us the human beings that we're meant to be. So that's the trust. And so that is just showing you how the story is actually real. So moving on. Alright, moving on. So now we'll just bring this back to Sirat al-Mustaqim and what we talked about initially in terms of what we talked about in the previous lectures. So we said that our path to actualization is our path walking on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. It's getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this path, although we always say it's mustaqim, it's straight, it's not actually that easy to climb. It's quite difficult and it's really easy to fall. So that's where what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us comes into play. The key that He gave us is like a guardrail. It's like a chain that we can use to hold on, make sure we don't fall off, and use it to make it easier to climb up this really steep Sirat al-Mustaqim. So the key's purpose, or the love of Allah's purpose, is to allow us to continue on that straight path. Because obviously, if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll listen to Him, and therefore you'll stay on the right path. To give you an example of what we mean by this, we'll give an example of, let's say, a Year 12 student, just finished Year 12. Really happy, parents are very proud of him, did a good job. He wants to go to some parties, everyone goes to these schoolies and stuff like that. But the parents tell him, don't go to the party. Well, why would the parents disagree? Why would the parents ever tell the child not to go to the party? He's going to enjoy it there, right? Well, obviously they have their reasons. They know that there are going to be bad things in the party. Maybe alcohol or drugs. They have a bit of experience. Maybe not personal experience, but they know that these things are present there. And so they know if the child goes there, he has a potential to do haram things. And that's why the parents would say no. But the child obviously wouldn't understand why the parents would say that. We usually go, oh, you guys are so restrictive, you're so mean, I hate you, blah, blah, blah. When I have kids, I'll never do this. And guess what? They have kids and they have the exact same rules. Why that's the case is because when we grow older, we get this experience and we understand why our parents thought like that, why they even told us not to go to these parties, because they recognize the risk through their experience. And we can actually say the same thing about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of us complain, we think that the Islamic rules are really strict and they confine us, they stop our freedom and stuff like that. That's not true. It's like when in the potentiality and actuality lecture, we said that a baby, when it's born, it thinks it's losing everything. It can't, because of its limited understanding, it thinks this dunya is terrible. But when we have the experience in the dunya, we know how wrong the baby was. Same thing here. We, with our limited understanding, don't understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes put rules down. We shouldn't question them because we need to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the best knowledge, the best wisdom. And so everything that He says must have a reason. Maybe we can't see the reality of something. We only see its appearance of these rules. Like we go, oh, why do we have to wear the hijab? What's the purpose of this? Maybe there's a reality we don't understand. And that's why we should never, ever question what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us and what the rules of Islam are. Because what they are things that we may not be able to understand, comprehend. And so this is where the love of Allah comes in. If we love someone unconditionally, we never question what they say. We always try making them happy. And so follow them. And if we do really love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it acts as that guide rail. We won't fall off the Sirat al-Mustaqim because we want to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us because we love Him. And that's the strength of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, if you remember in the story, the last thing the king told them, he actually sort of gave them like a bit of a warning. The king said that there was a condition that we had to have when he gave us the key. He said that if we keep the key safe, we'll be able to use it. Safe in our heart. That's what the king said. So what does this mean? Like, what does it mean to keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safe in our heart? And this is where we're going to introduce a new concept. It's called al-qalb as-salim, or the safeguard heart, and it's literally what the king was saying, is to keep it safe in our heart, in a heart that is safe. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam explains to us what a safeguard heart actually is. And he says, al-qalb as-salim alladhi yalqa rabbah wa laysa fihi ahadun siwah wa kullu qalb fihi shirk aw shak fahuwa saqit wa innama aradu az-zuhda fi ad-dunya litafraq qulubahum lil-akhirah. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, the safeguarded heart is that which returns to his Lord and has nothing in it but Him. And every heart which has companions with Allah or doubt is not safeguarded. For if it were, it would detach itself from this world, so their hearts are empty for the hereafter. So from this hadith, we can see the safeguarded heart sort of has like 3 conditions that you have to have so you can have a safeguarded heart. And the 3 conditions are no shirk. He said not to have equals with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. The second one was no doubt. He said you can't have doubt at all. And the last one is detachment from this world. So there were the 3 things, the 3 conditions that we have to have a safeguarded heart. Alright, so let's just look at each of them individually so we can understand what it really means to have a safeguarded heart. The first one was shirk. So shirk in general terms is not believing in one God. But the haram version of shirk is having many gods or any gods, none of which are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's usually what we attribute, to this mushrikeen and stuff like that. But even people that believe in God can have shirk. And so we know whenever we think mushrikeen, we always think, straight away, Quraysh, stuff like that. But there are many examples in the Quran of people that had shirk that were believers of God. And the prime example is the Bani Israel, the Jewish people, the Prophet Moses. And if you remember the story of the calf, it really shows their shirk. Remember, the Prophet Moses left them for a single day, and that one day they made a 180-degree flip. They just switched their entire, in one day, switched completely from worshipping God to worshipping a cow made of gold. What does that show us? How can someone make such a drastic change in one day? And the answer is, they must have had shirk in their hearts. They must have liked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equal to money, if not maybe less than money. So that when they lost just a little bit of guidance, they lost their prophet for a day, and suddenly they diverted into worshipping gold or wealth or a golden calf. And we can so that's people if they put monetary values equal to God, this is what can happen. But another type of shirk is when we worship the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala separately from God himself. And what we mean by this, the prime example to this is Christianity. That's literally what they do. They have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. They've split God up. And it's interesting, we don't really see this, but if you hear them when they pray for forgiveness, they ask the Son. But when they want to pray for mercy, they ask the Father. Does that mean that the Father doesn't have forgiveness? It's what it implies, because they never ever ask the Father forgiveness. They go through Jesus as the Son. The Son is who gives them forgiveness, not the Father, which limits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we cannot accept Christianity. That's our difference with them. We do not accept this idea of the Holy Trinity, because it is limiting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's splitting up Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he's not separate. So this shows you this asks for us to explore a bit of shirk. But if you remember in the first lecture, the very first one, we actually talked about shirk. We said there were two different types: shirk al-amali, of the actions, and qalbi, of the heart. So let's just go through how these look like in relation to the safeguarded heart. So shirk al-qalbi is literally what we're talking about when we want a safeguarded heart. A safeguarded heart theoretically should be just for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The problem is, we always, with shirk al-qalbi, we have equals to God, like Bani Israel did. And what we do, we sometimes love our job too much. Sometimes the things that keep us going, our motivatory factors, like coffee, you sleep without coffee. So if you love coffee so much, or the things you eat or drink, they can also take up a space in your heart that shouldn't be taken up by them. People that we find as inspirations. It's true that we need people to look up to. It's very true. But what we should try doing is looking up to people that have become insan kamil, perfected human beings, like Ahlul Bayt and the Prophets. Because these people are the people that we really should look up to, because we want to be like them, we want to perfect ourselves. And so we should try finding those role models. Other role models that take up space in our heart can become actually a hindrance to us. Because when we take people that are insan kamil as role models, we're just looking at them through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what we mean by that is, you're obviously trying to copy them or be like them or find inspiration from them because you want to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like they did. But with these people that are inspirational but aren't linked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can cloud us. I'm not saying don't have them, but be careful because they can cloud us. And the last one is family. Family is super important, don't get us wrong. It's actually one of the conditions, remember in our potential actual lecture, it's one of the conditions and environment that a child needs to grow up. But if we love them without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make them a rival to him, that's when it becomes problematic. And that's when we don't have a safeguard heart. So this is shirk al-qalbi. As for shirk al-amali, to understand shirk al-amali, I'm going to give you an example, or a quote really. It's by Oprah Winfrey. And she says, following your heart's desire will lead you in the direction your spirit wants to go. It sounds so inspirational, but it's so wrong. Why it's wrong is because there's an inherent problem with it. It's trying to tell us that we should dedicate our time and effort to our worldly desires. Follow your heart's desire. That's definitely not what we want. Because if we do that, we're going to be attached to this world. This reminds me of the notions that they're trying to tell us, love yourself. All these things, they're all wrong. Because what it's doing is it makes our actions and our time for someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even ourselves can become an obstacle. And that's a problem. And something we should try avoiding. That's the reality of shirk al-amali. For example, give an example of how this really would look like. If let's say we love our work so much, we want a promotion, we want extra pay and stuff like that. we may work overtime, for free. We just might work overtime. Not because we have to, just because we want to get that promotion, let's say. Here, we're wasting time. We're actually giving up from our time that's limited in this world. We're giving up some of our time so that we can achieve something that's not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what shirk al-amali looks in personification. When we give up part of our time, let's say for work. And especially in the month of Sha'ban, there are so many ad'iyah and du'as that we should be reading and that are recommended. So let's reflect on our days and see, are we giving other things too much of our time? Should we try focusing more time towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Just a bit of food for thought. So that's a bit about shirk. So what is interesting here is usually, as we said before, love is what gets us to motivation. Motivates us towards actions that get us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Usually that's the case for anything. We usually have to love something to get the motivation to actually do actions towards it. But with the love of Allah, let's try a different approach. Let's try doing as many actions as we can. And if we do a lot of actions, they become part of our routine, part of our daily lives. We're dedicating a larger portion of our daily lives towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and eventually we'll reach to His love. And what we mean by this is, let's try, verbally making the effort to, say, let's say, for example, when you're praying, actively say, Nawaitu an usalli, or before you eat, actively remember to say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Make sure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there with you in all the things you do. Because if you have that intention to get close towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of your actions, that will eventually manifest to a routine and to your entire life. And so it comes love to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's why intention is super important. And it's part of what makes the key so powerful in our heart, the intention. Alright, so that's just a bit about shirk. Now let's move on to shirk, which was the second thing Imam Sadat said we had to get rid of. So, intrinsically by itself, shirk isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it can be good. For example, if you remember in our animalistic soul lecture, or in our plantic soul lecture, we talked about how, lollies, the appearance of them may be nice, but the reality of them is they're haram and stuff like that. So, if you're in the store and you're walking past the aisles and you see something that looks delicious, having the check to go, hang on, I probably should check the ingredients, maybe it's haram, that check is so good because it avoids you ruining your form in the hereafter. So that's where shak can be a really good thing, or doubt can be super good. But then sometimes it can be bad. And it can be bad when it's to do with God and the Prophet, peace be upon him. So, and the prophets in general, the messengers. So, shak billah wa rusulih. And Imam Ali actually says this in a hadith. He says, من شك في الله تعالى بعد مولده على الفطرة لم يفئ إلى خير أبدا. Imam Ali says, who has doubt in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after he started following his fitrah, so after we follow our fitrah, he will never reach goodness ever. This is such a definitive statement. He's saying forever, there's no exceptions to this. So if we have started our journey to actualization, doubt towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and any of his messengers is bad. So here Imam Ali says, Man shakka fillah ta'ala wa fi rusulih fahuwa kafir. It's another hadith by him. So who has doubt in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his prophet is a kafir. Kafir is a really bad thing. We always, say these are kuffar, we have to get away from them and stuff. Imam Ali is saying if we have doubt in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're just as bad. So how bad is it to have this doubt? To understand that we have to see how bad shirk is and what shirk actually means. Sorry, not shirk, kufr. So kufr translates to covering, just to cover. That's exactly what it means. So what are we trying to say here? What are we covering? And the answer to that is we're covering the truth. Kufr is to cover the truth. Now we should probably ask the question, why would anyone willingly want to cover the truth? That's just stupid. And a famous quote by Kenneth Pike actually explains that really well. He says, there is no truth without responsibility following in its wake. So all those atheists that deny the truth of God and stuff, why do they do that? It's because they don't want to add responsibilities. They don't want to have to actually pray. They don't want to fast. They don't want these responsibilities. And these responsibilities actually, not wanting responsibilities actually blocks them from the truth and shows how dangerous laziness can actually be. They also don't want to think about the reality of their actions in the hereafter. So they choose to only look at the appearance. They cover the reality. And so that's what kufr is. And a prime example of someone who has reached the absolute epitome of kufr is Stephen Hawking. You can really see why. Listen to this quote. What he says is, what I meant by we would know the mind of God is we would know everything that God should know. If there were a God, which there isn't, I'm an atheist. So what's Hawking's problem? What was his problem? His problem is that he did not want someone like God or someone to know anything that he did not know. That's what he was saying. He is trying to know, he said that we know everything in the mind of God. He thinks he's at such a level that he knows as much as God. And so to even have something that is smarter than he is or has more knowledge than what his senses can tell him, he doesn't accept. That is arrogance, my friends. Arrogance to think that we are the best. We cannot be surpassed by any other creature. If we think what we see and what we perceive in this dunya is everything, that's arrogance, because we're putting too much importance on ourselves. And that was his biggest problem, and a lot of atheists have the same issue. They don't want to be have consequences from someone higher. They don't want that whole question. So kufr is an excuse to stop the truth. And so let's go back to shak, which was doubt. That was our initial concept. So here, shak comes from arrogance, because we start doubting things that we think shouldn't exist. If something is more powerful than me, it shouldn't exist. My senses can't comprehend it, shouldn't exist. And that's where doubt comes from. Doubt comes from our arrogance to accept that there are things that we can't understand. That's our problem. And so that's why doubt is really bad in terms of things like the messengers and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they're things that we, without current understanding, cannot comprehend. And therefore trying to limit these things by our senses is wrong. It's just an excuse. Where Sirat al-Mustaqim, there are no excuses. The last of the three things that Imam Sadiq said was detachment from this world. And if you remember in our potentiality and actuality lecture, we talked about what death was. And it was detachment from this world. We had to sever our ties from the material world so that we can take the journey to hereafter. And we said, the stronger our ties to this world, the more painful death would be. And the harder it is. Why? Because we have to sever these connections. Alright. So here, the question we should ask ourselves, should we love anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This shows that if we have connections with people or things from the dunya, they're a hindrance to us. Does that mean we should just hate everyone in our life, love no one? That's not the case, and we'll explain to you that soon. Just for us, let's introduce one more concept. When someone loves someone so much, they usually admire them, and that admiration goes to the point of copying. You try being like them, you know? Like this kid loves Ronaldo so much that he tries being like him. Same thing with we see kids trying to emulate their parents because they look up to them. So we should also try emulating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's characteristics. We are his representatives on this earth. We should try being like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of his characteristics is al-wadud, the loving. Which, the wadud, by the way, means loving everyone. So hang on. We just said that loving things connect us to this world, which is a bad thing. But then we're saying we should be like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and loving everyone is a good thing. So what's the answer? And the answer to that is, if we do have a safeguarded heart, it will have the capacity to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns everything, we can love everything under the umbrella of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. So that's the key. When we have the safeguarded heart, we can love everyone. We can love our family. We can love our friends and stuff like that. Our spouses. We can love everyone, but under that banner. And that's why it's so important to get the safeguarded heart. So our love can be directed in the right way. And even normal love can be turned to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the beauty of it all. But now that we realize we should love everything, in our heart, let's pose a question. How can we love people that have done so much bad? The sinners, like Yazid and stuff. Can we love Yazid? No, we don't, by the way. We don't have to love them to the extent as normal love. But there is something we have to comprehend. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, he still loves people who don't listen to him, do haram. that kill others. We said killing potential is super, super bad. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still love these people. And the people that don't believe in existence. How hurtful must it be for someone not to believe in your existence? Yet he still loves them. How he knows he loves them, by the way, is because he hasn't given up on them. Easily, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could unplug, their wire and they could just die. He could just give up on them, But he doesn't do that. He lets them live out their life in the hope that they somehow have a miraculous change, Or even if they don't change, to allow them as people that had the potential that he gave them to live, have fun in this life or have some comfort in this life because he knows that their actions, the reality of them, will not be comfortable in the hereafter. So we see all these people that only focus on, like their money and are not good people, like not Muslims. They still have things that are luxurious in this dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could take it away all from them, cars, mansions, money. But he doesn't, out of his mercy and his love for his creation. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can love everyone, surely we should be able to as well. And so when we look at Yazid and people like that, we shouldn't love them for who they are or how they killed their potential. We should look at them as human beings and love the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should actually theoretically love everything. And we should try having that mindset, not to hate people, not to have grudges. Because we should try looking at everyone as a human being. We can like people more than others, we can dislike people, but never hate, never get to that level. Now, let's just ask a question. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves everyone, what's the point of even loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If he's going to love us anyway, even if we do sin, what's the point of even, not sinning? Why do we have to be good people? And the answer to that is there are two types of love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to his creations. There's that general love that he gives to all the human beings, because we all have that potential, and he loves us as his best creature. But then there's a specific love that he gives to people who love him back. You get a special relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This specific love is what helps us reach him and become insan kamil. And so that's why we have to safeguard that key in our heart. We have to use it to get to him. Because if we don't, we will never reach that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we should yearn for. Because that makes us who we were meant to be. And means that we can get the best possible outcomes in the hereafter. So that's why we should love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala no matter what. The question now is, where do we start? We've now understood that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is super important. It's one of the things that we need to even start actualizing ourselves. But where do we begin with? So someone asked Imam Ali alayhi salam, he asked him, what are the levels of love? Ma darajat al-muhibbin. So the Imam says, أدنى درجاتهم من استصغر طاعته واستطعم ذنبه. So this guy was like, okay, هل هناك درجة أعلى من هذه? And the Imam says, نعم 70 درجة. So the translation of it, you need it, it's here. So Imam says, so someone asked the Imam, what are the levels of love? And so the Imam said the first level is making your good actions look small and your bad actions look bigger in your eyes. So this person was like, oh, is there a higher stage? And the Imam says 70. Yeah, 70. We haven't, that's a lot. And it's way too big for one lecture. So we're not going to look at all 70. I reckon we should start at level 1. Hopefully we can try getting level 1. And hopefully after we go to level 1 we can move forward, yeah? But yeah, it shows how much potential Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. How much we can grow. And how much we should, look forward to. So it really gives us more perspective how we probably should start now. It's never too early. Because there is so much left. It's never-ending process of getting better and better and better. So let's give a bit of examples of what it looks like to make your good actions look small and your bad actions look big. So this is the end of, we're wrapping up the lecture at the moment. So if you're in the shopping center, and two people, accidentally drop a coin, okay? And then you see the coin, you pick it up and you give it back to them. And what they do is they thank you. On the inside, what are the things that you feel, You go, I was so good. Oh, I'm such a good person. I had the right thing. I must be like the nicest person in the world. That is making your good action better than it was. It's the opposite of what we should be doing. Because we're giving the importance to ourselves. It's just driving our actions to ourselves. We won't be rewarded for something as much for something like that. What we should do is make the intention that we're doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we should do, we should say Alhamdulillah. Because let's be honest, all our actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that allows us to do them. We could die at any moment. So He's the one that is facilitating us to do the good action. We are acting as the hand, as if metaphorically, the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are the manifestation of His will. So we should thank Him that He allowed us to be the manifestation. Thank Him for giving us this opportunity to get close to Him. That's how we should look at our actions. This is how we can make every moment of our lives towards the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first thing that Imam Ali said. The second thing was making our bad actions look way bigger in our eyes. An example of this is if you're watching TV and then a bad scene comes up, like something bad, haram. Make it the biggest deal in the world. I tell you now, like, just complain for years about this. Like, what you should do is, instead of, a lot of times we just dismiss it, go, oh, whoops, accident, we won't be like punished for this. It was an accident. It's okay. But what you should say to yourself is, I should know that on this channel at this specific time, there are adult themes that are explored. I should be more aware next time. Make yourself accountable. Because if you make the thing bigger, you're removing any like self-contentment about yourself, and you're linking yourself back to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you're remembering His rules and things like that. As we said, those are what guide us towards Sirat al-Mustaqim. So that is why it's super important. So this is only level 1, by the way. There are so many other levels. And so, where can we even start? So if level 1 is this hard and takes this much effort, how can we even possibly attain all 70 in our lives, which are really short? There is a way. There's only one way. And it's to ask. Who to ask? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who else can we ask to get His love but Him who gives us everything? So what I ask you to do is, whenever we need anything, even in our journey to get close to Him, ask Him for His help to help us get near to Him. Because without His help, we can't even get anywhere. And so, this is just a little dua from Munajat al-Muhibbin. It's what we're going to end on today. It goes as this: Allahumma rziqni hubbak, wa hubb ma tuhibbu, wa hubb man yuhibbu, wal amal alladhi yublighuni ila hubbak, waj'al hubbak ahabba al-ashya'i laday. So it is in English: Oh God, grant me your grant me love for you, love for the things you love for the people who love you, the work that gets me to your love. Make my love for you the most beloved thing to me. One of our scholars says that we should try reading this in every one of our salahs, in the qunut section. Read this dua 5 times a day. Even if you don't want to do it in the salah, just do it 5 times a day. And if you do that, inshallah, you will get the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we want to leave you with that. Hopefully you can take this away and apply it into your practical life. And this is the end of the lecture segment for today. Now we'll move on to Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now we're going to move on to the video segment. So I'm going to just make a little bit of a comment. All our video segments today are from a movie. We have 5 different segments, video clips, from one movie. So I do recommend that you stop this video, you go watch the movie for yourself. It's Narnia, Prince Caspian, so the second Narnia movie. It's a really good movie, highly recommend it. The whole series is amazing. They're so full of really good concepts. It's if you think this is going to be good, wait till you see the first one, the third one's even better. So in terms of Islamic concepts, so definitely recommend watching the entire series. So if you want to enjoy the movie, so no spoilers, and also so that you can see the other concepts, because we're only going to focus on what's related to this lecture, which is quite limiting. So if you want to get the full scope of the concepts that are introduced in that movie, I'd recommend watching it for yourself. But if you don't want to, you don't have the time for it, fair enough, we'll go through the clips of today in the discussion. So inshallah, we will start with Narnia, Prince Caspian. Just a bit of we have to give you guys background, obviously, for this movie. So the whole story from the first movie is that there are 4 siblings, and these siblings go to another world, which has a king who's a lion, and he's really amazing and everything. And there was this evil witch, and she had it was pretty much the forces of good, forces of evil sort of thing, and they were prophesied to come and save the land from the evil witch and help the lion. This movie is now, after they did that, by the way, they lived their life in that place, and they returned to the normal world after they were around in their adult lives. This movie is when they come back. So now they're back to their youth in the normal world, so they're still near the same age. And then they go back to this world. And this time, this world isn't a magical kingdom. It used to be, what it used to be was a kingdom full of all these creatures and things, and them 4 became kings of this place, kings and queens. But when they came back, it was overrun by other humans called Telmarines. And these humans had pretty much exterminated all the magical creatures in the land. So this clip specifically is them meeting a dwarf who's a magical creature, and he is going to take them back to the rest of the people who are in hiding. The magical creatures are now in hiding. What's interesting here is that the lion that was the savior back then, who was the king of everything, in the first movie, he hasn't appeared for ages. He disappeared so long ago and has never returned to save the magical creatures. So no one remembers he exists, okay? Or they doubt his existence in the first place. So this is the first clip. Hopefully you'll see the concepts we talked about today in it. Just to give you a run through of the characters, probably because that's important. I forgot the dwarf's name, but you'll see there's a dwarf. And he's lived in this land, so he doesn't believe in this lion creature anymore, because he hasn't come to save them, he hasn't been around for like thousands of years, stuff like that. As for the main four characters, they're the siblings. The oldest sibling, his name is Peter, he's going to be important. Peter used to be the king back when they lived in the magical world the first time, but when he went back to the normal world, he lost all the respect that he had. So he's struggling with that concept of he is no longer that respected person, and he's struggling with his own self-importance. The second character is the older sister, Susan. She's not important for the sake of these clips, so you can ignore her. The third character is the youngest brother. His name's Edmund, and he in the first movie, he accidentally, without knowing, sided with the bad guys, and didn't believe in his other siblings and what they were telling him because he was a bit jealous. But then after, when he goes back to the good side, his faith is so much stronger than his other sibling, you'll see. And he actually now realizes that since he's experienced mistakes, he's now come back as a better person, and he has more faith than everyone else. And the last person is the youngest sibling. She is the youngest sister, and her name's Lucy. She has the strongest faith out of all of them, even stronger than the youngest brother. And she's the first person to go to the magical world the first time, and she had the strongest connection with that lion, the king. Okay, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Today, because there's so many different clips, we're actually gonna have a discussion on each of the clips separately. So after it. So I'm gonna open it to the floor. I'm sorry, we only have one person in the audience. Do you have any thoughts, or do you want me to just talk myself?
You can talk.
Alright, so if you guys want to have time to think about what you just saw, you can pause the video. If not, we'll continue. So in this clip, we could see that the youngest I'm going to keep saying daughter, youngest sibling, Lucy, she loved Aslan, the king, so much that she had the ability to see him. She actually saw him. But everyone else couldn't see him. He disappeared when they all looked. Why that was the case is because they didn't have the love that connected them to him. And each of them, you could see there was a difference and variance in terms of why they couldn't see him. The dwarf, for example, I want you guys to think about why he couldn't see Aslan. But if you remember, he doesn't really trust or believe in this person anymore because he hasn't come for a while. He's felt like they've suffered so much, and this person, if he existed, could have saved them. So that's the dwarf. As for the oldest brother, he asked, if you heard what he said, he asked Lucy, he said, why wouldn't I have seen him? Something must have blocked him from being able to see Aslan. And he actually specifies, he says, why couldn't I see him? So I want you guys to think, I'm not going to tell you guys the answers exactly, but I'm trying to hint at something here, and it's something to do with having equals in your heart, and what you value in your time and stuff. Then the youngest brother, what was interesting was he said, last time I didn't believe in my youngest sister, and that cost me, so I think we should believe her. What's interesting here is even though he didn't have a direct link with Aslan, he had belief, and that helped him. If you saw at the end, when they all walked away, he waited and only walked away when his little sister walked away too. So he's following as if a representative. You know how the Prophet, peace be upon him, he has the strongest link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We may not have a strong link yet, but we can look at people who have a strong link, and if we believe, we can also have this love through them as well. And so he had that connection. That's just a bit about Edmund. I'm not going to tell you any more about his beliefs and stuff, but that was, and then lastly, Lucy herself, because she had such a connection and love for Aslan, she could see him, but only when they looked, he disappeared. First clip. Alright, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
This clip really just accentuates the first one quite a lot, but also adds a lot of extra elements. So, just a bit of context. So this is when they've reached all the magical creatures, and with them is the prince of the bad people, who's escaped because his uncle wants to take the throne, so he's trying to kill him. So the prince has decided to join these people because he saw how wrong the Talmarines were and everything, and how beautiful these creatures are, and so he's decided to help them. So that's just who that other character was that was talking. Not going to be important in our discussion. But if you saw, it was the strongest bit was the interaction between Lucy and Peter. Lucy reminded Peter that in the previous movie, that evil queen that I talked about, she was actually not defeated by Peter or any of his army. It was Aslan that defeated the White Witch. So here, Peter was making it seem like the only option was for them to take charge. But she told him he wasn't listening. He was actively rejecting the fact that Aslan exists. She saw him. And the problem was that he, for some reason, as you will hopefully have gotten, is unable to get past himself and see Aslan. And appreciate that Aslan was there. So I might say a bit too much here, but his arrogance is what stopped him. He was like, we've waited for Aslan long enough. It's our time. His arrogance stopped him from seeking help, sort of thing, and waiting. He made it, as she said, made it seem too black and white. There were other options, but he was being so limited in his own perspective that he couldn't see the full picture. But with her love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she had began, actualizing herself, and so she had more of a connection, so she had a more holistic thinking, if you remember last lecture. So that's all I'm going to say for that one. We'll move on to the next clip. Okay. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
This scene was really just about Lucy and Aslan, as you now that's the line, by the way, that we haven't seen yet. So their interaction was really interesting. Firstly, when she just saw him, by the way, there are many lions in this world, but she knew it was him straight away. That shows how, if we really do have love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we'll be able to see him in everything, and recognize him, recognize, those things straight away. All the time, we struggle to see things because we have a limited perspective, but if we do love him, we'll have this holistic view. Something else that was interesting was that when she said, I knew it was you, but nobody believed me. And then he told her, why would that have stopped you? Really good point. A lot of the time we're struggling to go, we say the path of Islam is really hard because, no one's following it, and there's hardly anyone, and in this Western society we feel like the majority, are walking this way and we're walking the other way. But why would that stop us? If the majority believes something, that doesn't mean it's right. Here, that's exactly what he was telling her. He's telling her that, why would what people think stop you? And a lot of the time we do have those feelings, so we should try, realizing that our goal is there, being alone shouldn't be a problem. And the same thing is, you're not alone. We have a lot of other people. Just in this clip, we didn't show it before, but Edmund's actually the one that told her, it was the younger brother, as though the one that said that she should go and look for Aslan. He convinced everyone else to let her go because they wanted her to stay help with the fight and stuff like that. But she was she really thought that she had to win this, they had to go get Aslan, and he was the only one that convinced everyone to he believed her and convinced everyone to do it. So that's another interesting thing. When you have that much faith in someone, it can actually have an impact on other, you know what I mean? I've lost my train of thought, but yeah. And other things in this clip. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
I think for now we'll move on. If anything comes back, I'll tell you. So the next clip is just there you can see they're returning us to a battle because at the moment there is a war that's going on between the magical people and the Talmarines. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
So this is
محمد.
the second last clip. Interesting thing in this one is the reaction of the Telmarines, the force that was running away. That was like what we want to focus on here. The fact that they saw Aslan and Lucy and they hesitated. What did that show? It showed that they saw the sign. Like if we say that Aslan is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's say, or Islam or something like that, and Lucy's like a prophet or something, it's like the people that came before us, like Bani Israel and stuff, they've seen the miracles, they've been given evidence, but they don't straight away believe, like they continued the advance after. Only when the war came, like a lot of time when like a miracle, like not a miracle, like adab and stuff, only when the actual thing, till they actually stop and they realize that they're a mistake and stuff, when it's too late. So that's just a representation of them. When they hesitated because they knew there was something wrong. They knew that was like with atheists and stuff. They see the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They sometimes do have these doubts, but they try dispelling them because they're too arrogant. They continue their march. Only when calamity strikes do they then realize when it's too late, or when they die do they then realize it's too late. Another thing was, they hesitated first. They looked at Aslan and Lucy, then they looked back at the forces of the Narnians, or the mythical creatures. Then they chose that it was easier to cross through that way. That was another problem, because what they were afraid of the many compared to the few. So they saw the appearance of everything, whereas the reality was quite different. This side was much stronger. And it's the same with us, when we a lot of the time see the majority of people here and only a little bit of people here. The appearance is these people are right because there's more of them here. The reality is quite different. And so that was the point of this clip. The last clip is sort of like at the conclusion of the movie, and you'll see it now. Alright, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Alright, last clip. I'm not going to give you everything for this clip specifically because I want you guys to think about it yourselves. So the last bit of the clip, so with the dwarf, I'm not going to say much about that because I want you guys to go away and think about what that interaction was. But the bit before was interesting. It was when he told the kings and queens to rise, and then he told the prince from the Tamarines to rise as well. And then he said, I don't feel like, I'm worthy. That's an example of us downplaying our own good things, making them feel insignificant towards us. What he had done in this movie, you see, is commendable, equivalent to anything that any of the others have done. But he downplayed his own importance. And that's what when Aslan says, by you saying that, it shows me you're ready. Because that's what we have to do. One of our steps to loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like attaining his love, like true love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is downplaying our own actions. And it shows that if we do that, we are ready to move on. And so that was one thing. The last bit about the dwarf, I don't want to give too much about because I want you guys to think about it. But just remember, he was the guy at the beginning that didn't believe. I don't use the word because it's going to be give it away for you guys. But he didn't believe in the existence because he had struggled so much in his life. And surely if someone had existed, then he would have helped them out by then, etc., etc. But when he saw the real evidence in front of his face, there was a different reaction. So that is the end of today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully next week we can continue with the next step, which is going to be loving and debate. Inshallah you benefit from this, and the quiz will be in the link description of this video. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.